Alright, thanks for coming everybody. I just want to talk about why genetically modified foods are harmful to people and just to society in general. Alright, so start off out with what is genetically modified food. Genetically modified food, GMFs is what they're short for. It's more like a hybrid of something. It's between the similarities between two things. And what genetically modified foods are specific genes from two different species into one thing. So, it is the deleting and inserting of genes. So for instance, if you put one gene into this specific species and then take it out in this one. There are two processes of doing it. There is cogenesis and the process of transgenesis. Conventional breeding is the regular way of breeding, I guess you could say. It's the, so these are just the generations to come. So for instance, if you had a black dog and a red dog with blue eyes, this would be the first generation, and then crossbreed with another black dog, and so on and so forth. By the fourth generation, you would have a black dog with blue eyes. Transgenesis and cisgenesis are two separate things. They're more artificial transferring of genes. So transgenesis is with an unrelated organism. So for instance, a horse and a turtle. So if you put those two together, you've got a water-breathing horse. So that's how that works. A wild relative would be like a seahorse, a hurdle. So wild relative would be like an apple or like a butterfly, and like a glow-in-the-dark worm, for instance. So a wild relative would be like the red from an apple and the green from an apple. You put those two together. So that's cogenesis or cisgenesis. I want to bring up this point, Genesis 1:11 through 12. And the reason why I'm saying this from a biblical standpoint is because I believe that God created everything perfectly and that we should keep what He designed to stay perfect. So then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees, on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to the various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. So the reason why I'm saying this is that God created everything perfectly, so why should man alter what God thinks is perfect? So why should we alter plants and trees? But God does say that we should use the resources on earth to our advantage, but I don't think we should manipulate these resources. So that's why I bring this up. The second source from organicauthority.com states that GMOs require massive amounts of pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Now we all know these things to be extremely poisonous to the human system. And when I was told when I was younger, I was told to always wash my fruit before I eat it, always wash my apples, always wash my vegetables before I eat them, because they have these pesticides and chemicals all over them. But now what they're doing is they're genetically altering these fruit to where the pesticides and herbicides and fungicides are actually in the DNA of the fruit. So what you're eating is herbicide. It has the DNA of herbicides in the fruit. So you no longer have to wash your fruit because there's no bugs on it, but now it's inside the pure fruit, which is really, really a gross thought. And some other things that they do because of this, for instance, corn. What they did is they genetically altered the pesticides in the corn. So when the corn stalks grew, all of a sudden these so they grew, and then they had these pesticides in their DNA. So when all these butterflies and bees started going at them, they all died in the millions. And another thing about genetically altered with corn, I should say, is that did you know that corn is only supposed to be this big? Corn on cob, this big, that's it. They genetically altered it to be this big. That's gigantic. Just a fact right there. According to truefoodnow.org/GE Foods, these are the stats for the percentages on what is genetically altered. 91% of soybeans are genetically altered. 88% of cotton is genetically altered. And the reason why cotton is because cottonseed oil. We eat cottonseed oil. 85% of corn is genetically altered, from that big to this big. And not to mention that high fructose corn syrup, which is in everything we eat, is genetically altered. So everything that we eat has 85% of the corn that we eat is genetically altered with the high fructose corn syrup. So if you were to actually walk into a supermarket per se, and you walked into Target, or you walked into Cub Foods, or you walked into any other supermarket store, if you looked on any of the shelves, 70%, over 75% of those shelves would be genetically altered food. that you're eating every day. So, which is really kind of a gross thought. So the way I see it is that if it says, for instance, organic on it, organic food on it, that stuff is organic, but everything else you can assume is genetically altered. Everything. Cereals, soups, crackers, everything. It's really, really nasty. And then here are the stats. It started in 1996, and obviously that idea grew very successfully, but now as you can see, over 94% is genetically altered. Only 6% of what soybeans that you eat is real. The other stuff is all fake. So, and then according to care2.com, genetic engineering creates dangerous side effects. So these side effects are long-term side effects. They're not like short-term or anything. So this happens over time when you eat and consume all this genetic material. It creates, I'm not going to say these names, but it creates these high risks. And it's only over time, so it really affects the human body in a rather negative way. So, yeah, that's what Care2 says. Then I would like to state that this actually all started with the Bill Clinton administration in 1996. It was started by Bill Clinton. He had the idea of stopping world hunger, and that was his idea. And so what he wanted to do, he came up with this idea. And maybe, hey, maybe we can copy the food. Hey, maybe we can preserve the food somehow. Hey, maybe we can do something so where the food does not get destroyed or something like that by bugs, by fungus, by herbs, by the sun, by drought, by water, by rainfall. And so they came up with this idea of genetically altering the food. So what they did is they started growing all this food. And then they started, shipping it worldwide or whatever, and then everyone was so impressed. And then they started putting it in the stores, like at regular stores like Target or Cub Foods. They put it in these regular stores that we eat every single day. And no one even noticed. They never put labels on them. They never put anything on the food that says tested, genetically altered. They just put it on the shelves. The first thing that actually started was the tomato. That's why the first picture was with a tomato with a shot in it. That was the first genetically altered vegetable or fruit that they used. So what they did is they put these they put all this food on the shelves that's genetically altered, and a lot of people got mad. So what they did is they decided to open a 6-month case against it, and they used all these. Then they came up with absolutely nothing. So what they used, what they did is they just kept everything on the shelves and never removed anything. So we still have today all this genetically modified food, and it's always been there. It hasn't gone anywhere. And thank you for coming. That's it.